Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to episode 84 of the Falcoholic Live. I am, of course, your host, Kevin Knight at Falcoholic, Kevin on Twitter, joined by my co-host this evening, Mr. Evan Birchfield at Evan Birchfield on Twitter, and we are here to recap the Week 2 triumph. That's my working title for the Falcons' victory over the Eagles. We're still, workshopping that one. So if you guys have ideas, throw them in the chat. But yes, the Falcons did in fact beat the Eagles on Sunday. In case you've been living under a rock, we're going to talk about it. We're going to get into the nitty gritty of that and the start to the season. The Falcons have had, one dumpster fire and one, pretty good performance. So we'll talk about that. We'll get into some injury report stuff. Talk about that and also get into the practice squad additions this week. As well as previewing this week's matchup against the Colts, which it has been exactly 8 years apparently since we've played the Colts in Indianapolis. So a long time coming, this game. Before we get started, I want to ask my co-host, Mr. Evan Birchfield, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. We're halfway through the week and, one more day closer to Falcons football. So. All
right. Yeah, I mean, it feels like an eternity every time it's like Wednesday. It's like, oh man, is there football yet? Any day. I mean, even Thursday night football, especially the first couple weeks, is like, I'm willing to watch it. So just to get any kind of football going here. But it's nice to have football back in our lives at this point of the year, even if it's occasionally terrible. But what was not terrible, great seg here, was the Falcons' win over the Eagles on Sunday Night Football. Falcons did defeat Philadelphia 24-20. It was the first time that the Falcons had beaten the Eagles in the past 3 seasons. Interestingly, before that, the Falcons had won the previous 3 games. So these are 2 teams that are kind of have gone back and forth in recent years. We finally kind of got the best of our rival in a game that was hard fought. It definitely featured some injuries, but on the whole, a pretty good performance by the Falcons with some notable flaws, but we'll get into that. But before we break into a lot of stuff, we have to talk about the iconic play from the game, which of course was Julio Jones's 54-yard screen pass touchdown, the beautiful pancake block from Matthews. Everything went right on that play. Evan, what was going through your mind when you saw that magnificent play take place?
It's one of those plays where you don't really appreciate it until later because it just happened so randomly. It was such a big, I believe it was like a 4th and 3. So it was such a big moment in the game because pretty much if we screwed that up, I believe we had some timeouts, but it probably would have, our chances of winning went down if we failed. But I just remember watching, and then it's like Julio Jones is such a freak that, he's just gone. And then when you rewatch it, it's even better because it's such a team play. It wasn't as if Julio caught a pass and juked a bunch of people or caught over Luke Kuechly. Those are plays that he's making. For this play, it was obviously his, if he dropped the ball, but him catching it and just using his speed. Sanu doing a block, Jake, as you mentioned, Jake Matthews just pancaking that one dude. And it was just, when you see the footage of the play afterwards, you can see Matt Ryan, running downfield with his hand up, yelling at the Falcons sideline because apparently it came out later on that they were talking about that play leading up to it. It was like a check down or something.
Yeah.
So it was in their back pocket basically, ready to go. So they were, Matt Ryan was juiced up on that. And then you can kind of see for a split second on that video that's been posted around Devontae Freeman all excited. But when you rewatch it there's a certain angle the Falcons posted where Devontae Freeman, you can kind of see him when the point of which everyone gets excited is amazing because it's right after right after Julio catches it, Sanu starts freaking out instantly. Matthews, I showed a picture on Twitter. Matthews is laying there literally on top of the dude, and he's already looking downfield. And then you see on the other side of the field from that certain angle on that video I'm talking about, and Freeman's already freaking out, and he's on the other side of the field. it was just a great moment. It's like when I think of, I don't remember any close to this last year. What really got me excited aside from this would probably be, obviously, I hate to mention it, but like Julio's catch in the Super Bowl was one of those moments. But against the Green Bay Packers, that same year when Julio made that, it was on a defensive pass interference, but he made that play because he just took off and showed everybody, his freakish talent. But this was one of those moments where it's like, if you're a fan, like you're out of your chair screaming, like it was and it happened on a 4th down, especially seeing who it was against, the Eagles, who've pretty much had our number the last, 2 games we played them. And credit to them, they did have injuries and stuff like that. But, we went to their house twice and we lost literally like at the last second. So it wasn't like they were beating our ass or something like that. Like it's been a close game between both teams for many years. So, and this kind of came down to that same sort of thing where they did have our number there for a minute. But, they stepped up and the Falcons, won the game. But it was, for the last 2 years, definitely an iconic play.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a lot of fun. Because I know a lot of people, including myself, are kind of, in the mindset of like, we've seen this play before. Like we've seen this happen, like the Falcons in a need to score. They're down late against Philadelphia. They have to score a touchdown to win. We've seen this the last 2 times these teams played. Neither time were the Falcons able to get it done. And then kind of just out of nowhere on that 4th and 3, they pull out that play call. Like you said, apparently, Dirk Cutter and the offense and Ryan had seen the Eagles run this zero blitz so many times that they had created this play call, and they were like, look, if you see the zero blitz, just go to this and we're going to try to catch them. And it worked like art. I mean, it was perfect. And it all the pieces came together just like an art, like a beautiful picture. Matthews hit his block perfectly. Sanu got just enough of his guy, and like as soon as Sanu saw Matthews land on Maddox, that nickel corner, he knew that it was a touchdown. Like you could tell immediately. Sanu already knew, and like you said, it's just funny to look at the faces. Like everyone seemed to already know when they hit it that was going to be a touchdown, and that was just an awesome play. Tyler Raines, I agree that NFC Championship Julio play where he just like shakes off 3 Packers on the same run. That's probably my favorite Julio play, but he's got a lot of good ones. We're spoiled with Julio in terms of that. And you did mention
it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
That refresher.
Yeah, it's been a minute since we've seen that, so it's always nice to be reminded.
Like it was like a track race, and he made basically like 2 people couldn't catch him. I know one.
He was gaining ground on him.
Yeah, he hit another gear and just was gone. Like
it was
even
crazy.
At the speed. Yeah, even at the speed, he was definitely. It was obviously a first down, but he probably would have scored anyways. But it's like then he hit some other gear and was just gone. You know, and he does that little like track thing when he goes into the end zone like it's a finish line. It was just such a cool moment. He ran down the tunnel like Forrest Gump or something.
Yeah.
And the whole team's freaking out. It was just we earned it.
That was a good moment.
Yeah,
that was a good moment for the team and for Julio, and I'm glad we got to see that one. I'm glad a national audience got to see that play too.
Yeah.
And there is something to be said, about the Eagles. They did have some injuries, but this is 2 teams, 2 contenders. We hope in terms of the Falcons at least. So I think this was an important game for the team. We'll hope that they can build off of this game and start to string some wins together here. But even if this is like a blip in a dark season, it was a very enjoyable blip, and we're gonna always remember it. So that's just nice to see after that dumpster fire in week 1. A pretty competent performance from the team overall. Excuse me. Moving on to like some of the more nitty gritty of the game. Obviously, the offense did a really good job in terms of stats, but we also saw Matt Ryan throw 3 interceptions. The running game didn't really get off the ground. On defense, the defense actually I thought played pretty well. They created a ton of pressure. I think Tech McKinley had 8 pressures by himself. They had 3 sacks against one of the NFL's premier offensive lines. So I mean, this was really a team performance, and it definitely wasn't perfect, but they did what they needed to do to win, and that was nice to see from this team. But let's kick things off with the offensive side of the ball, and we'll start with the big name, obviously, in Matt Ryan. 27 of 43, 320 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. It was kind of a polarizing performance from Ryan because it seemed like whenever he just wasn't throwing the pick, he was having a pretty good game. But then he just threw these bad balls, and that came perilously close to costing the team the game. Because if you think about it, they were at the goal line when he threw one of those picks. That's at least 3 points you've taken off the board, and then you count the Matt Bryant shank. That's another 3 points. That's 6 points at least 6 points they left on the field there, and you give them those points, and they're beating the Eagles 30-20. At the end of the game, and it's totally comfortable. But what are your thoughts on Ryan's performance as a whole, and are you concerned about his elevated number of interceptions over these first 2 games?
No, I'm not really concerned. I mean, he's got 5 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. If it was like 5 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, then I'd be worried. But they were just all like boneheaded decisions. That's pretty much it. And I know he's got to regret it because he's that type of person. But like the one, I'm trying to think of the interceptions just to break them down. Like the one was pretty much in the end zone there where Hooper was like triple teamed, and I believe his arm was hit or something. Yeah. Which didn't matter. It was a bad decision anyways. Like even if he had the time to throw it in there, it was probably going to be intercepted.
Right.
And then one of them, I believe, went to Sanu, and it was like thrown behind him, but Sanu hit it, like tried to catch it one-handed basically, and it got hit up in the air, and then one of the Eagles people intercepted it.
Yeah.
And then the other one was where he was in the end zone basically and tried to launch it to Julio. It was like 30 yards short, it seemed like.
It was short. I like the decision there, but it just didn't have enough on it.
I mean, because if it connected,
that was probably a touchdown.
That's a hell of a play. But, unfortunately it wasn't. And, it's just kind of like, like it's definitely like a boneheaded decision. But on top of that, our punting, game was kind of crippled because of Bosher having the groin tightness.
Yeah.
So it's like you can't really make those, bad decisions like that because it basically costs us, good field position. It's just, but no, I'm not really worried about it. He still finished with 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Like he'll improve, I think.
Yeah.
But no, I'm not too worried about it. Are you concerned?
Not really. I mean, we've seen this when he transitions to, quote unquote, new offensive coordinators, that the season after the transition, he tends to throw more interceptions than otherwise. Since, Dirk Cutter's technically not like a brand new offensive coordinator, but it is a scheme change of some sort. But I don't expect him to have like a 2015 Shanahan year where he's really, kind of adjusting to the system. I think it'll be a little bit easier than that. And it was, they're just bad. They're aggressive decisions. So, like, in some ways, like, I do appreciate the aggressiveness, but you just need to kind of dial it back a little bit to prevent the interceptions. Because, like you said, like, if we don't throw those picks, we're probably looking at a pretty comfortable win here for the Falcons. They it probably should have been that, but it's, you can't take them back, and that made the game close, and luckily the team was able to kind of get around them. But just got to clean up the decision making a bit. But I don't think it's anything like systematic or anything like permanent with Matt Ryan. I think it's just some early season stuff that we'll see him clean up over the next couple weeks. So now that I think the second, obviously the receivers were great, but I do want to talk about the offensive line first, because I think that was maybe one of the more surprising outcomes in the game, which, surprising, first of all, because we saw, rookie right tackle Caleb McGarry leave the game with what looked like a pretty serious injury, then come back into the game in the second half. The Falcons' offensive line gave up only 1 sack, and this was with the Eagles. I think they ran, 8-0 blitzes throughout the game. They were pretty much constantly blitzing extra guys. This is a pass rush that's known for being ferocious, and I thought the Falcons' offensive line acquitted themselves very well, all things considered. What were your thoughts on how they played on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, one sack total, and it came late in the game. Matt Ryan did get some pressure during it, but that's expected. But I mean, they did a solid job against, considering who they were playing. And then, as you mentioned, McGarry leaving, which looked like it could be like a couple weeks, if not worse. And then just appeared later on back on the field.
Yeah.
It was just an impressive showing by him when a lot of people were probably, including myself, not expecting a whole lot. That was one of the true things was before the game wondering how the offensive line is going to hold up against the Eagles defense. And they did a, pretty damn good job, to be honest. So, yeah, I mean, they deserve the credit, but I mean, there's so many people you could give credit to in that game. I don't want to bounce around, but, just like the secondary on the Falcons played amazing, but we'll talk about that later, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, but I agree with you. Like, I thought Jamon Brown, for whatever reason, we talked about it on the post game. Like, Jamon Brown is just like he's Fletcher Cox's kryptonite. Like, he just neutralizes Cox somehow. I don't know why, but he just seems to be able to just stop Cox, which is one of the Eagles' best players, obviously. And then I think James Carpenter has been a really pleasant addition at left guard. Hasn't really made a lot of flashy plays, but very solid in pass protection. Just hasn't been an issue. And then I thought Matthews kind of calmed down in this game. Obviously had that great block for the screen. Just looked like his old self a little bit. And then Mac, the timeless wonder, just directing traffic in the middle, and really they looked just a lot more comfortable, particularly when they were facing a lot of blitzes in this game. They just looked like they were settled down, like they were more comfortable, and it paid off on Sunday. So I was really happy to see that. So we do have to talk about the receivers because they had a great day. 200-yard receivers for the Falcons. Julio Jones comes in 1 yard ahead of Calvin Ridley with 106 yards and the 2 touchdowns, and then Ridley with 105 yards and the 1 touchdown. Just such a devastating duo. I mean, they were both awesome. There were a lot of people that got involved, but what was your thought on how the Falcons receivers played against that Eagles secondary, which looks like it could be a serious weakness for them this year?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, Ridley really stepped up. Him and Julio actually had like almost identical stats. They were both targeted 10 times. Ridley caught 8 of his passes, which is a really good sign considering a lot of people were, all last year were bashing him for drops and stuff like that. And, it was warranted in some situations, but he's really taken another step this year. And then, Julio's thing. But Ridley, he had before that, I think it went off his fingertips or something, but Matt Ryan threw a deep ball to him. So he almost scored twice, really. Just can't say enough about that. And then, Sanu, he's not getting as much targets and, but he's in there, he's still on the field. And that's what's important is, when the defensive coaches are trying to figure out, who to guard or who to have guard what. We've got all these weapons out there, but I like that Matt Ryan's got more freedom and he's going to these certain players where, we'd wonder why are they throwing to Luke Stalker? Well, he only had 1 target, which is good. Mm-hmm. And Julio and Ridley had 20. Yeah, so, I mean, that's half of Matt Ryan's throws pretty much. So I'm glad they're finally realizing, like, let's go to our weapons. Freeman was the third. He had 3 catches, 42 yards.
Yeah, he had that one really long catch. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that's a solid game. It's just you can't say enough about our receivers. They're incredible. And Ridley, it's like he just seems like he's in that. I don't want to put expectations on him or anything, but he's got it. And when you were watching the game, you just see him making these plays and just not even when he's like getting the ball, just he seems to be learning a lot from Julio Jones. And I was watching this video that was talking about Julio Jones. One of the main reasons he wanted to stick around this offseason, dealing with the contract situation,
right,
was he said he felt not obligated. That's probably not the right word, but he felt he wanted to help Ridley.
Yeah.
Which, that says the world about Julio, and we already know he's a great person and everything. But Ridley's really, you could really see he's growing. it's just, I don't know how you can look at our receivers and not feel good. Russell Gage, seems like he's got a ton of talent too.
Yeah.
Just, excited to see what's going to happen because we do have like a lot of weapons when you compare to other teams. So
yeah, there's just so many guys. I mean, we're like bristling with weapons.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
yeah, I agree with you. Like, Ridley did have some struggles with drops, but that was his rookie season, and we know that like rookie wide receivers rarely produce at the level he did. I mean, that was an exceptional rookie season. For him to even be as good as he was last year was an outlier in terms of rookie wide receiver, even first round rookie wide receivers. I mean, he had a great rookie season, and I think the scary thing was like I think we all knew he could be better than that. I think this is a year we could legitimately see the Falcons have 2,000-yard receivers. I mean, I think we're going to be looking at that when the season's over. I mean, I would not be shocked at all if Julio's got his usual 1,400 plus and Ridley's at 1,000. It's just really great to see those two on the field together. They're such a dynamic duo, I think, and they complement each other really well. They can both kind of do the same things. Obviously, Julio's a little bit more physically imposing, but Ridley is just very technical, and he's got that speed. And they were really close to getting him another deep touchdown. Justin Hardy was like an inch from having a deep touchdown. They were close to blowing the doors off that Eagles team if they just had a slight, those balls were slightly better placed. We were looking at 2 deep touchdowns on even that one drive. But yeah, I mean, can't say enough nice things about the receivers. Austin Hooper was his usual solid self. I think he had like 4 catches to help move the chains, and like you said, Freeman had some contributions there as well. There's just so many guys that it's going to be hard for all of them to be active every game, like to actually get targets, especially because like you said, Julio and Ridley, 20 targets between the two of them, so they're going to be the guys that are going to dominate things. But that's a good thing. That's okay in my book. Now, I know a lot of people have been concerned about Freeman after his kind of slow start here. What are your thoughts on Devontae Freeman in this season? Are you concerned at all about his lack of production so far, or where are you at there?
I mean, you kind of have to be a little concerned because Ito Smith's just outplaying him. His stats are better, and he looks better in the eye test. I mean, you just hope it's Freeman being rusty because he did have an injury. We kind of gets lost with all the big names like Ricardo Allen and Keanu O'Neal that we were missing, but Freeman did have an injury as well. But Ito Smith has been playing great, so it's kind of hard to like feel bad because it's like neither one is really doing what they really should be doing.
Yeah.
But seeing Ito Smith outplay him is probably a bad sign. With the rate at which running backs drop off the map. So to answer your question, I am concerned, but it's not like I'm losing sleep because luckily we have a receiving core that's going to win games for us. But we do need a running back to step up because if for some reason somebody's going to shut down the pass, we have to be able to run the ball. And then if we're up, we have to be able to run the clock out. Right now Freeman's got a 2.2 yards per carry. And that's, that may be good for other people, but not good for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and Ito Smith's at 6.3. So that kind of tells you who is, the better runner currently. And, Ito Smith has 9 less carries, but he's almost got 20 more yards.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to phrase it. Like I'm concerned for him, but I'm not worried because I think we have Brian Hill, Allison, like we have other running backs who could probably step up and do a better job. It's just how long are they going to let Freeman keep getting the carries if he's not really producing at all?
Yeah, and I think you're right there. I think that the Falcons have kind of foreseen this eventuality. We've got 2 running backs that look great in preseason that aren't even active on game days because they have Freeman, Ito, and Kenyon Barner, active. So I don't think that we should, write off Freeman just yet. He's a year removed from playing a lot of football. We played 2 of the NFL's best run defense is in the first 2 weeks. So I would give Freeman, a couple more weeks to try to find his footing here, but I don't think the team is going to keep running Freeman if he continues to struggle like this. They do have Ito Smith, who they clearly trust. They trusted him in a lot of clutch situations against the Eagles. I think he's someone they view as interchangeable with Freeman, in that he can do all the same things. He can run the same routes. He has the same running style. I think they're not afraid at all to have Ito Smith take over the starting job if they need it. And then, they've also got Brian Hill and Quadri Olson just kind of waiting. So we'll see what happens with Freeman. I'm not concerned. Like you said, I'm not really concerned. But he needs to kind of show that he can get back on the horse and, start producing again, or we're going to get more Ito Smith, and we might see some of these other running backs get opportunities as well, which isn't necessarily a bad thing either. That might be a bad thing for Freeman, but it might be a good thing for these young guys. So we'll see what happens there. Not too concerned one way or the other there. We'll see what happens. But Ignacio Aurela is asking about the Quinn's play calling on fourth downs. Yeah, I know you don't like the prevent defense. I mean, no one really likes the prevent defense. They play that sticks coverage, like you're saying, like where they line a lot of guys up at the down. That actually did work on that 4th and 8. And it has that. I don't necessarily mind playing at the down marker coverage. I hate traditional prevent where you got people just standing like 20 yards off. But at the same time, if I was the defensive coordinator, I would, as long as I wasn't up by like 3 touchdowns, I would basically say we're gonna play a 4th down like it's a 3rd down, or like it's a 2nd down, or like it's a 1st down. We're gonna man up and we're gonna run the same defense. It's not gonna be a soft coverage or anything like that. But at the same time, especially if you're up, you understand wanting to prevent the big plays. And a lot of times the Falcons, when they're playing that off coverage, is that they're fine allowing the opponent to complete those short throws to eat clock, which is what they did against the Eagles. And the defense really, I thought on that final drive was actually playing pretty well. Carson Wentz had some just ridiculous plays to evade sacks, like twice on that drive. I think any other quarterback would have hit the turf, no question. So it's, I don't know that it was the coverage was the problem there. I think it was just, Carson Wentz having some really great plays because, he's a very talented quarterback. And on that 4th and 14, I think that was just kind of Neal getting a little aggressive and kind of losing track of who he was supposed to cover. And that was, again, just kind of a freak play, too. Aguilar ended up catching the ball in the middle like 3 guys. So it's just a great play by the Eagles there. I don't know if it's the fault of the coverage or not, but I do hate rushing 3. And I don't remember the Falcons ever rushing 3 in this game. So as long as they rush more than 3 every down, I'm pretty much satisfied with that. Rushing 3 is the devil. So on that note, maybe we should talk about the defense some. So, and I think we can kick things off with the pass rush, which I think were the heroes of this game. I mean, they were, I would say, like borderline dominant against an Eagles offensive line that, I mean, they have talked about being the best in the league at times. Maybe they're not this year, but they're definitely, top 3, no question. And the Falcons were having their way with them. I mean, the Falcons won the battle in the trenches in this game. They shut down Philly's run game. They were putting pressure on Wentz basically every single play. It was just a sight to see. I was shocked by it. So what were some of your takeaways on the pass rush's performance?
Yeah, and it doesn't really show up in the stat column, but Tack looked really good. There was a video of him bull rushing like one of the left guards on the Eagles offensive line. I forgot who it was. It was next to Jason Peters, but just completely pushed the dude into the pocket. And those sort of things don't show up in the stat column, but they make plays for other people on the, on defense. So Tack was who I was most impressed with along the line. Like, we know what Grady Jarrett is and stuff.
Yeah.
Even Vic looked good at times. Like, it was just, it was amusing that we saw the 2 biggest things we were concerned with, probably offensive line and defensive line, both had pretty good games. And we're not used to seeing that, and it was great. I wish Jack Crawford, who's a dear friend of mine, would get on the field more, but they don't seem to be using him unless it's like passing downs or something, which is fine because Davison, he's been playing silently great too.
Yeah.
Just you can't say enough about what the defensive lines look like. Just after the offseason where everybody was worried and we like needed to draft Ed Oliver or somebody else, and the Falcons basically said, no, we're going offensive line twice. It was like, what's going on?
Right.
But,
yeah.
Kudos to them for, I guess Dan Quinn, kudos to him because the defensive line looks pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Like you mentioned Tyler Davison, who's been one of the biggest surprises. I mean, I think we all expected him to be like a good run defender in the middle, but he's been, a dominant run defender in the middle. He's been terrific. It seems like he's really kind of instantly assimilated into this defensive line, into the team culture, into the brotherhood. I mean, he was one of the guys that was kind of featured in that dancing video they put out. He was front and center, breaking it down with the guys. It's cool to see him, come over from the Saints and so quickly, assimilate into Falcons culture. I'm sure he realized how far superior, Atlanta is to the Saints organization. So that was probably part of it. But yeah, I mean, Davison has been a pleasant surprise. I think Alan Bailey on the interior, and that's kind of why I think Jack Crawford hasn't been getting as many snaps, is because they've wanted to play Bailey, who has been another pretty good presence against the run and has been offering something as a pass rusher from the interior as well. But yeah, like you said, Tack, I think, was the biggest standout. He didn't actually get on the stat sheet in terms of like a sack, but eight pressures, I believe, were charted, which is, that's just an insane number of pressures for one game. I think he's among the league leaders, in pressures over the course of the first two games, which is nice. And like you said, Vic as well, he really should have had more sacks. Like, I don't fault Vic for not getting the sack, quote unquote, as Carson Wentz is like throwing this ball, literally falling to the ground, somehow is able to generate enough arm strength to get the ball like 20 yards downfield. I don't know. I mean, that's just a crazy freak play. Like, this is why it's the NFL. These are the most talented athletes in the world. That's not a Vic Beasley problem. That's like Carson Wentz actually is, that's one of the things he's good at, type of play. And then Grady Jarrett, I think, is often forgotten because we just sort of expect excellence from him, but he had a great game as well. So
he did.
Just really impressed with that unit as a whole. And maybe for the first time, the Falcons pass rush, the strength of the defense, I don't know how to even process that, but that's what it looked like after week 2.
I think it speaks volumes too. Last year you could say Jack Crawford was, probably our second best defensive lineman. And now look at everybody. Like, he's not having to be as used because of what we have. I mean, even Adrian Claiborne had a sack, It's like all these people are stepping up. Davison, wasn't on the team, obviously, last year. But he was pretty much our biggest free agent signing. And then Alan Bailey, as you mentioned, looking good. It's deserving because we've been waiting forever for a pass rush, and now we sort of have one. So,
yeah, and it's been crazy to see that. Like you said, like, I was a big Team Ed Oliver fan. The Falcons didn't have an opportunity to draft him. There was buzz that they may have considered trading up for him, but they didn't. So either they were saying we're confident with the guys we have, which is what they said publicly, or they, just really wanted offensive linemen. And it seems like maybe they were right. Maybe they didn't need Ed Oliver. Time will tell if Ed Oliver turns into this, beast that we all expected him to be. And time will, of course, tell if Lindstrom and McGarry end up being, beasts on the other side of the ball. But, I mean, right now, the pass rush, I don't have anything negative to say. I mean, if you can do that against the Eagles... If you can do that against the Eagles' offensive line, man, I mean, you can do that against just about anybody.
That's the other thing is, like, it wasn't like Tack was just getting all those pressures against me. He was getting them against Jason Peters, who's probably going to be in the Hall of Fame someday.
Yeah.
And that just says a lot. Like, he's definitely taking another step. And, the pressures don't show up as sacks because they're not sacks, but there's such a big, in terms of the way the pocket shifts when he's pushing guys in there. it allows for other people to get sacks or allows for the play to be disrupted in some way. Like, it's such an underrated stat. But I'm happy for him because it's like, when unfortunately when things go bad, they do hear, from the fans and stuff like that. And sometimes they deserve it, but he's definitely taking another step, and it's good to see.
Yeah. I know Solaire pointed out the kind of cool stat right now, which is that the Falcons have only allowed 9 plays of more than 10 yards over the first 2 weeks.
Ooh.
And I think like 5 of those were Dalvin Cook runs. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Taking that into consideration, that's pretty impressive. Some of the other stats, like, I would tell folks, I tell this to everyone, like, don't look at yards per game stats because yards per game can be very volatile and doesn't necessarily tell you the whole story. Look at yards per play. And in yards per play, the Falcons are currently the NFL's 5th overall defense, allowing only 4.6 yards per play, which is pretty darn good. And that, right now, early in the season, there's a lot of teams that are allowing very few yards. Like New England's only allowing 1.5 points per game because they played 2 trash teams back to back. So these are, obviously going to change. But keep in mind, Atlanta's committed 7 turnovers over the first 2 weeks, and they're still one of the NFL's best defenses statistically, which is pretty darn impressive to turn the ball over that many times and not be, among the worst teams in the league on defense. I think that does say something, and who knows if they'll end up finishing, as a top 5, top 10 defense by the end of the year. But at this point, they're playing like that over these first 2 games. I think that they've kind of played well enough to be considered as one of the NFL's kind of rising defenses, at least.
And in that game, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in that game, what really, and we hope it continues going forward, but it wasn't that the defensive line was the only thing. It's like a puzzle piece. It needs to go together. The secondary complemented the defensive line and vice versa. The secondary played outstanding. The play that I have stuck in my head, and it's probably my favorite play outside of the Julio one that obviously, won us the game. But where Ricardo Allen's, where their Eagles are ready to score, Ricardo Allen goes up to the line and, or not up to the line, but he goes up to, I think it was like Sheffield, basically tells him he's going to be watching an area or whatever, and then drops back, and then, they throw it to Aguilar in the end zone, and Ricardo Allen just comes up and flies and, up and hits him. And it shows you, like, that was such a perfect play to show you why he's a leader on the defense, the captain for the, team overall. Probably, it's thrown around a lot, but he probably is the smartest guy on the defense. And it's great to see, considering, he wasn't a first-round pick who was just thrown into it. Like, the dude was literally, like, at a different position on practice squad. We might have even cut him or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, Mike Smith.
But
Mike
so
Smith
was he
cut him.
To join the practice squad?
Yes, he was cut and then placed on the practice squad, and then he was brought back onto the roster at some point that season, I believe.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, just the road it took to get there, and he's, we saw what happened when he wasn't on the field last year. It's great to see, and then Isaiah Oliver too, making great plays, especially on the last one that everybody remembers. But and then Trufant, catching 2 interceptions, like, how does that go unnoticed?
Right. Trufant finally learned to catch. Yeah,
it's just like, if anybody watching this right now predicted that, send me and Kevin the lotto numbers.
For tomorrow, please.
I don't think many people saw that happening. We were hoping for 2 interceptions this year.
Yeah.
We get 2 interceptions in a game, good for him.
Yeah.
Because at one point, everybody, we thought, he was a top, defensive back, and then he got the stigma of not being able to intercept passes, and it was true in some cases and stuff. But you like to see these players bounce back from stuff, such as Julio with he can't catch touchdowns, and now he leads the active streak of touchdowns or whatever in the NFL. It's great to see Trufant intercepting. Good for him.
Yeah, and it's great because we heard from Quinn. Trufant's been spending extra time on the jugs machine, which I think we talked about it on the post game. It's like you don't really hear that about corners very often. But, Trufant was like, look, I need to be able to catch these interceptions because he's got his hands on so many. Like, he should be a corner that's known as a ball hawk because he's in the position to make these interceptions all the time.
Oh, I know.
He just needs
one
to
of
catch
them was
them.
in his lap.
Yeah. One of them, he like literally fell down and sat there and waited for it.
Yeah. it just dropped on him.
But, I mean, if he's learned to catch, that's great for the Falcons defense. And like you said, like I thought Oliver, he had an up and down game overall, but when he really needed to make a play, he absolutely delivered on that on that 4th and 8. Ertz is a big dude, man. Like he's not easy to tackle, and he came up and laid that hit, and that was the game clincher right there. So, kudos to Oliver. He's gonna have some growing pains. This is his first year as a starter, but I think we've really stumbled onto something with him. I think he will end up being a real difference maker for this defense. It's pretty crazy. And like you said, just having Ricardo Allen and Keanu Neal back there, those guys, they're so important to this defense. The identity, the leadership, the smarts. It's so important for this unit to be cohesive, and they look cohesive now. Last year, you could just tell, like, they seemed lost a lot of the time. Like they were missing their guys. They were missing their leadership. And this year, it seems like they've got that back. They've got their mojo going. So it looks nice. I'm excited to see how they perform over the rest of the season because I think we could have a potentially good defense on our hands here for the first time since 2017. So that would be fantastic because if you pair this offense which we all expect to be one of the NFL's premier units with a good defense, that's the recipe for a contender, and that's what we all hope this team is, and we'll see. We'll see if they can continue that momentum this week. Before we get into the Colts, let's talk about some of the rostery stuff this week. In terms of the injury report, there were a couple players for the Falcons that didn't practice today. Obviously you guys have heard about Matt Bosher. They did bring in a practice squad punter just in case. We'll see, what happens there. But Bosher, Kenyon Barner, and Caleb McGarry did not practice today. Doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's just Wednesday, so you guys should probably monitor that. But I wouldn't worry too much about it overall. Keanu Neal, Matt Gono, and Luke Stalker all were limited. And then on the Colts side, linebacker Darius Leonard, if you guys didn't hear, he was diagnosed with a concussion after the game. He did not participate on Wednesday, so it's looking like his status for the game is in serious doubt. Also, running back Marlon Mack did not practice today with a calf injury. We're not exactly sure what's going on with that. We will keep you posted there, but that's definitely one to monitor as he is their starter there. And then Pierre Desir, the corner, he's not expected to play on Sunday. He was, however, limited in practice today, so we'll see what goes on there. But also T.Y. Hilton limited, Al-Qadim Muhammad, Jabal Sheard, Kamoko Toure, and Jonathan Williams all limited for the Colts. So both teams a little banged up heading into this game, but not obviously for the Colts. Darius Leonard being out is a huge blow. We'll see if he can recover in time. But do you have any takeaways from this early look at the injury report?
No, I mean I'll be more concerned. Like I'll pay more attention to it as the week progresses. Honestly, the biggest thing the Colts are missing is Andrew Luck. Because like this offseason, that looked like a much more difficult game. Now it's like I don't want to, because those are the type of games the Falcons like to lose. When like we feel confident. But Jacoby Brissett isn't. He's a good quarterback, but he's not Andrew Luck. So we should be able to handle business there. But Darius Leonard, obviously, as you mentioned, if for some reason he missed, he's one of the better linebackers in the NFL. So, and he's like super young, so a lot of people probably don't even know who he is. So, that's definitely one to watch. Obviously, people know T.Y. Hilton and stuff like that, but Darius Leonard's, if I could pluck somebody off of that Colts team, it'd probably be him or
probably Quentin Nelson for me. But
yeah, that's what I was thinking.
But yeah, I mean, Darius Leonard, he's like their Deion Jones. I mean, he is their linebacker leader. He is their middle guy. So he's a very important piece to that unit, no doubt about it. And then obviously Marlon Mack is the other big one. That's a big one to monitor because the Colts are, without Andrew Luck, this is not an explosive passing offense anymore. This is a team that's going to want to run the ball behind that very good offensive line. And, if Marlon Mack, the workhorse, is out, that's going to put a real damper on that strategy going into it. But yeah, I mean, Brissett is not a pushover by any means, kind of getting into this Colts game a little. Brissett, I would say, is like a slightly below average NFL quarterback, but I mean, he's a starter. Like he's not bad. He's not, a bottom tier quarterback or anything like that. I mean, he could start and would be better than a lot of teams' quarterbacks. Like he'd be vastly better than Eli Manning. I'll tell you that much. This definitely isn't a pushover game. It's not quite as scary as it would have been with Andrew Luck, where I think we would be going into this like, okay, this is a true toss-up. We're playing against one of the AFC contenders here. And without Luck, I would say the Colts are a competitive team, but they're not necessarily striking terror into the hearts of their opponents. So we'll have to see, what happens the rest of the week here. But right now, it seems like they might be down some of their key players. They might be down their cornerback one in Desir, and one of their best defenders in Darius Leonard. So we'll have to monitor that, but those could be some significant losses for the Colts. Before we go fully into the Colts game, I did want to let you guys know the Falcons cut fan favorite Austin Larkin from the practice squad, as well as tight end Carson Meyer, who I didn't realize was on the practice squad. They did add another punter, like I mentioned, Matt Weil, who actually has filled in for Bosher in the past and been fine. And then offensive lineman Nate Wozniak. So those were the roster moves that happened this week. Nothing on the main roster, so I don't think there's. If there was that much concern about Bosher, we would have seen Weil get on the actual roster, I think. But he's there on the practice squad just in case, and we will continue to monitor that for you guys. So keep an eye on the Falcoholic for that information. And if you guys don't mind, we do appreciate all the likes and subscribes you guys throw our way. They do help the stream out, so if you guys don't mind throwing those at us, we appreciate that. And I did see a question from Ignacio in here. So what is Quinn doing by deactivating Deidrin Senat, Brian Hill, and Olsen? It's a numbers game. I mean, honestly, I think that having inactives is kind of a dumb rule. I think you should be able to have all your players active if they're on your roster, but it's the NFL's thing, so you have to make a certain number of players inactive every week. I'm sure most of you guys know that. And it's just a numbers game. The Falcons aren't going to use more than 3 running backs, more than likely. So one of them's the returner, so it has to be Barner. The other 2 is just your 2 guys that you want. And then with Senat, it's just a pure numbers game. I think they have 8 other defensive linemen other than Senat, and all of them are active. Literally every single one. 8 defensive linemen are active for the Falcons, so they just don't have another space for a 9th defensive tackle who's probably going to play a handful of snaps, if any. So Senat is basically just an injury backup at this point, which it's not ideal for a 3rd-round pick, but with how well the Falcons' defensive line is playing, I mean, I don't necessarily think it's an indictment of Senat. I think it's more of we just have a lot of really good defensive linemen, and Senat's just kind of the odd man out. But I wouldn't be too concerned about it. I don't think it's any gamesmanship or anything like that. It's just you have to make some players inactive, and then that's the players that they need the least, I guess. I would say. Yeah.
And if Freeman keeps struggling, they could. One of those guys, probably Brian Hill, be active on game day.
Yeah, we'll see if that becomes, the thing. That would be quite a fall from grace for
That's something to keep an eye on.
It is. So we'll see what's going on there with Freeman. But hopefully it doesn't come to that point. Hopefully Freeman, gets back on the scene and looks like his old self again. But it's a distinct possibility.
I think what's interesting, before I forget, is I think this matchup will have 2 of the oldest kickers in the league right now, with Vinatieri and Matt Bryant.
Yes,
because Vinatieri was apparently talking about, there was rumors he was going to retire, and the Colts talked him out of it.
Yeah, because he's had an abysmal start to this season. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's actually when you get up past 45, you're you're up there.
Yeah,
He's been kicking a long time.
Yeah, it's rarefied air when you get past 45 in
Mm-hmm.
terms of kicking. Like I think Morton Anderson, stopped at
Mm-hmm.
44, 45. Matt Bryan, I think, is 44.
Yep.
It's rare to play past that age, and I don't think anyone would fault Vinatieri for wanting to call it quits at this point. But he has really struggled to open this season. We'll see, of course, if that's just kind of a fluke or if the age has caught up with him. But that could be a real storyline for this game. If Vinatieri's misses some kicks, I mean that could definitely be the difference in a game. That is, I'm sure the Colts are hoping is low scoring, because I think we all realize, and the Colts realize too, that if the Falcons score like 30 points, it's probably going to be an Atlanta win.
Yeah.
So, we'll see what happens there. But yeah, moving kind of into this game matchup, we kind of talked about it a little bit in terms of how the Colts are going to want to attack the Falcons. They do, with Brissett, have looked like a little bit more of a conservative offense. More play action with a lot of run heavy stuff. Marlon Mack being their kind of bell cow, and then running the play action pass off that with the very explosive and very talented T.Y. Hilton. They have weapons at tight end too. Eric Ebron's out there. Jack Doyle, another quality tight end. Those are two guys that are going to challenge the Falcons. So what are your thoughts on how the Falcons match up with the Colts on defense, and what the Colts might be trying to do on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, the way the Falcons win, obviously stopping the run is key, because Marlon Mack's super underrated if he's healthy. You just got to make, basically do what they did with Wentz. Brissett's a mobile guy if he needs to be. What was a big takeaway from, our previous game with the Eagles was Wentz looked uncomfortable the whole time. You want to be clean about it, but like there was that one play where Wentz threw it downfield. I believe that was one of the Trufant interceptions, where Deion Jones hit him like right after he threw it.
Yeah.
And he walked off, holding his chest and stuff. Like that's how you win games. Like, I'm not saying take dirty shots and stuff,
no,
but you got to make the quarterback super uneasy. You don't want them out there feeling like they're Brady, just slinging it around and stuff. You got to pressure Brissett. If Brissett's going to beat you, nothing against him. He's doing great. He's got like 5 touchdowns and an interception.
Yeah.
Considering he wasn't expecting to start this year. Andrew Luck retired right off the bat.
Yeah.
But you got to make him uneasy, and that's how the Falcons are going to win the game. As you mentioned, they have like 2 of the better tight ends in the league with Ebron and Doyle, which they haven't actually used like a ton.
Right.
Between the both of them, they only have 7 receptions this year. So, pretty much shut down T.Y. Hilton, make Brissett uneasy. And I think, obviously Falcons offense needs to handle business, and we should be okay.
Yeah, I agree. And, that's going to be the thing as well for the Falcons is, can this offense really get out there and, get an early lead? I think that's going to be vital for this team if they want to win this game comfortably, because I think if you're making the Colts play catch up, that's a situation where you're going to have a big advantage. As well as the Colts have played over the first 2 weeks. I mean, they gave the Chargers everything they could handle. That game went to overtime in week 1, and then they did manage to upset the Titans on the road. Brissett, he's had some solid stat lines, but like he hasn't thrown for more than 200 yards in either game. The Colts have not scored more than 24 points in either game. He hasn't been a high volume passer. He has been an efficient one, certainly. High completion percentage type stuff. Hasn't thrown a lot of picks. He's not a guy that's going to make a ton of mistakes, but this isn't an electric passing offense like the Chiefs or the Falcons or the Saints, where you're going to be able to get into a shootout and win that way. They win with the run game. Like that week 1 game where they had the most success so far on offense against the Chargers. Marlon Mack had 174 rushing yards on 25 carries, and that's their ticket to beat the Falcons, is if they can have that kind of success on the ground. But at the same time, looking at it from the other direction, where how the Falcons are going to match up with the Colts, and I think, this is a secondary that's vulnerable. They do have some players. I think Desir has been kind of a pleasant surprise for them, but he, is allegedly not going to play in this game because of a bone bruise. The Chargers, threw for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns against them in Week 1. The Colts defense I think is better against the run than the pass. They held Austin Eckler, who's had an electric start to the season, to only 58 yards rushing on 12 carries, which is a solid average, but it's not a huge number. It's a defense that I think is beatable for the Falcons, and that could be a key to the game early. But what are your thoughts on how the Falcons match up with the Colts on offense? Like offense versus defense, I guess I would say.
Yeah, you mean the Falcons offense?
Versus the Falcons
Colts
offense.
Defense? Yeah. I mean, it's going to be difficult for them, especially after what you mentioned with those guys who might be out. We'll know a little bit more later in the week, but as you said, you made the comparison that Darius Leonard is like their Deion Jones, and that's very true. Young linebacker leader. If Desir, did you say he didn't practice?
He was limited today, which is surprising because as of a day or two ago, they said he was going to miss time.
Right.
So he may be practicing. I'm not sure they're going to trust him enough to play based on early reporting, but. Right. Yeah, he's their number 1 corner by all accounts. So
I guess the next guy up would be like
Rock Ya-Sin, I believe. Yeah,
Rock Ya-Sin, yeah. Who I remember people talking about Atlanta trying to draft him or something. But,
yeah, I mean, he's a solid prospect, but he's a rookie and he's raw.
Yeah, so. Yeah, and his first test covering probably not either Julio or Ridley. That'd be pretty rough. But I mean, I like our chances against not picking on the Colts, but our offense against anyone. I think the Eagles have a pretty good defense, and the way we were able to play against them was telling of that. Their secondary wasn't as great, but considering the Colts aren't totally healthy, I love it. It is in Indianapolis, I believe, so it's in a dome, so we should be fine there. It's not like we're playing. Weird stuff happens when we play outside, but then again, we did lose in Minnesota, so I guess that's not totally true. But right. Vikings are a lot better than the Colts. I'd be more worried about this game if we had some offensive injuries ourselves. But it seems like everyone's doing okay. McGarry, I guess there was no real update with that. I thought I read he was limited, or
he was out today, but what he said earlier in the week was that he has knee soreness, but they're just hoping
but it doesn't
for
sound
no
like
setbacks.
anything.
It
doesn't seem like he's missing weeks or anything.
No.
I mean, he did return in that game, but I love our offense when I'm looking at their defense. There's not like Leonard's pretty much the only one that scares me, and if he's not 100%, Justin Houston. I remember when it came out that the Chiefs were getting rid of him, and a lot of Falcons fans were hoping he'd end up with us. He has 1 sack. Just looking at his stats, they don't seem to be. Stats aren't always telling, but
Houston's a good player. Obviously,
crazy.
He's not like the beast that he used to be in terms of like one of the NFL's premier pass rushers, but he's still very good. Malik Hooker is a very good free safety. I would say he's probably like the second best player on their defense.
Definitely.
They have some guys. Can't remember if Henry Anderson's still there. He's a good player, but they have Quincy Wilson's another young corner they got there. They have players, but it's not a phenomenal defense. I would say it's like a league average defense. Without Leonard, I think Leonard is like their Deion Jones, and that's going to be a major issue for them if Leonard's not in there. There's no way to.
Yeah, he's definitely their Deion Jones, and if he's out, they don't have a Ricardo Allen, to step up as the next leader or whatever. I mean, Malik Hooker is good as you mentioned, but I feel like you take out if Leonard's not there, they're going to have, it's a total drop off on their defense.
Yeah, I think they don't really have someone to kind of step in behind Leonard. That's a spot I think that is going to be a problem for them, and that's going to be the key for the Colts really is to keep this game in a manageable scoring situation and just try to run the ball against the Falcons. See if you can coax like a Week 1 Falcons performance out of the defense instead of a Week 2 performance, because if you get the Week 2 defense, you're not going to be able to run very much on them. So I'm hoping that that's the defense we see the rest of the year for the Falcons. But I think, I think on paper, it is on the road. The Falcons generally aren't as effective offensively on the road, so don't expect like a fireworks show. But I think they do match up against this team pretty well. We'll see. It's a dome that obviously helps Atlanta as well. They don't have to worry about the weather or anything like that. So I think this is a game that on paper the Falcons should win. But since it's on the road, since it's an AFC opponent, which the Falcons are apparently like awful against over the last several years, it's probably going to be a lot closer than it should be. But I do expect the Falcons to come away with the win here. Are you in the kind of the same boat with that one?
Yeah, I mean, out of the first 3 games, I'd say this one's the most confident that I think the Falcons are going to win. So that's not saying a whole lot because they like to sometimes do stuff that is unpredictable. But I mean, when you look at, we still have, I think next week is Tennessee, right?
Yes,
or
and that's
is it Houston?
Atlanta. It's Tennessee next week in Atlanta.
Yeah, and then we have Houston. So we're basically running through the AFC South. We have the Jaguars later in the season, but these next couple games are pretty favorable. I think the Houston game will be pretty good.
Yeah, that's gonna be a good game, a fun game.
Yeah. I mean, that's a tough matchup, but that's like you said, that's gonna be a fun game, just to watch in general. But I mean, I'm not too concerned, but I don't want to Luckily, I'm not on the team, so it's like I can overlook them. But I just want them to go out and win the game, not do anything stupid because when you look at, not to bounce around here, but we've got if you haven't been paying attention, the NFC South has some quarterback issues, and all of a sudden we look pretty damn good. So it's like we don't want to blow this opportunity where we have, the Panthers are struggling. Cam apparently was in a boot.
Yeah.
We know Drew Brees' hand issue, and then Jameis Winston is just on the field. So it's like we have this opportunity to, take advantage. And you don't want to see people hurt, but we had our share of injuries last year, and they didn't care.
Yeah.
So we have to do the same thing. We're not going to sit there and, take it easy on them just because they're hurt. They don't, that's not football. But let's do this. I'm ready. Like I hate. It's like you go that off season without football, and then it's like you get the preseason, gives you a little taste, and now we're in the regular season. Especially after that game, Sunday night. It's like I want more football, but it's like now it's only Wednesday. We have the Jaguars and Titans to watch tomorrow.
Oh boy,
that's going to be a hoot. But I just this is one of those games where the Falcons should win. Though, to answer your question, it shouldn't be It shouldn't be. I mean, it'll probably be close because it's in Indianapolis, but when you look at it on paper, it shouldn't be. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I don't expect like a 20-point win or anything, but this is a game I think the Falcons should win probably by like about 10. I think this should be definitely like a 30-20 type game. It'll probably be closer because the Falcons hate us. They want to make us sweat.
Like I don't want to be confident.
No. Anytime I feel confident,
This reminds me of was it 2016 where we lost to the Chargers? I think late in the season when they weren't really good.
It was one of these years. I can't remember.
And it was one of those where it's like we were super confident we were going to win and we just lost, and everybody's like, what just happened? And it didn't matter in the long scheme of things, but it's just like the division we play in, we can't afford to just waste games that we should handle.
Yeah, we can't. We obviously it's an out of conference game, so losing it in terms of tiebreakers and stuff like that, it's not a big deal, but this is a winnable game, one of the easiest games left on the schedule in terms of the next few weeks. So getting this win, I think, is important in terms of this team still needs to prove to us that they're not just going to be totally random every week, oscillating between dumpster fire and confident looking. So I'm going to hope that that's what happens and we get a competent performance from the team against the Colts, enough to get the win. I don't need them to blow the doors off of them, just enough to get the win. I'll be satisfied.
Yeah, just get the W, because I mean, up until the bye week, we do have some tough games, the ones we mentioned, but we still have the Rams and Seahawks, and both of those are good opponents and stuff. Those aren't gimmies at all.
Yeah.
So what do you think is what do you see them going into the bye week with, like their record?
Let's see. It's 1-1 now. I think they're going to win against the Colts and Titans. I'll go ahead and mark the Texans game down as a loss because they're going to lose one of these AFC games. I don't know which one it is, but the Texans one's probably the most likely. It's on the road. The Texans are a good opponent, so we'll say, they're going into that Texans game. They'll be 3-2 at that point. They'll beat the Cardinals, I hope. We'll say that they split the Rams and Seahawks, so they win the Seahawks game and lose the Rams game. So they'll be 5-3 going into the bye.
Yeah, so that's about what I was thinking.
And that little middle part where it's
I'll take it.
Yeah, where it's Texans,
could be a lot worse.
Rams, Seahawks. That little stretch there is really a tough part of the schedule, and then it's division games after that, basically. So
yeah, and it's 2 straight ones. Go straight into the New Orleans one. Yep. It's been rumored it could be when Breeze comes back, but I did see other things saying it might be 8 weeks. So
we'll see. I mean, it's really hard to predict, I think, and when you're playing at that age too, like Breeze. I think Breeze is a tough guy, but like people have to understand, like the older you get, the longer recovery takes. It could be longer than initial predictions, or it could be shorter for all we know. I mean, it just who knows.
We have 5 straight divisional games, don't we?
Yep, and then we get a short break to play the 49ers and Jags, and then we close the season with the Bucks. So, that'll be interesting. We're gonna get all those division games out of the way back to back to back to back to back. So, hey, I don't mind.
Well, we have the bye week to practice, or get ready for.
Get all prepped, So I'm not against it. I actually think that's an interesting schedule there. So it'll be fun.
Because I mean, if you come out of those 5 and you win 3 of them, I'll take it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they should win more, but
probably, especially if Cam and Breeze aren't playing, like we should be winning those.
Yeah. I mean, and Jameis is still, looking bad.
Yeah, I mean, he's still very much like. I mean, they barely beat the Panthers with Cam Newton basically hobbled. So, I mean, he was not capable of playing football in that game. Like, it was pretty obvious that that was rough. Yeah. All right. Well, any final takes before we wrap it up tonight?
No, I think we pretty much covered everything.
So.
Just ready for football again.
Yes, bring me the football.
Keep dragging on.
Yeah, bring me the footballs. And
Did anybody else have any last questions on the chat?
I know someone asked if there's going to be a pregame show, Solaire. No pregame. We will be doing post games, of course, for pretty much every game. So look for us afterwards. Probably around 4-ish, depending on how long the game takes. But yeah, no, we won't be doing the pre-games usually unless it's like a primetime game. Then we'll do a pre-game for most of the primetime games. But, maybe for the Saints games if we're getting really hyped up or something. But, but otherwise,
the one's on what, Thanksgiving?
Yeah, the Thanksgiving. I won't be doing a show on Thanksgiving. I have responsibilities. But other than that one, we'll be here dependably. But yeah, guys, we do appreciate you tuning in on this Wednesday night. My co-host tonight, Evan Birchfield, at Evan Birchfield on the Twitters. Evan, anything that you're working on that you'd like to plug?
No, not really. I'll have on Friday, I believe, my fantasy article. So if you're into fantasy football, that'll be up on the Falcoholic. And there's like a mailbag. You can ask me questions either on Twitter or email the Falcoholic Evan at Yahoo, and that'll be included like in a mailbag or whatever. But no, aside from that, no, I appreciate you having me on. It's just fun to, talk about. I was on, right after the last game.
Yeah.
So we covered a lot, right after, but I appreciate you having me on, just to talk, and all the people in the chat, thanks for listening. It's cool to have the, live, back to back, like we can look in the chat and see what they want to talk about and stuff, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's cool. It's a unique format, and we do appreciate you filling in for Adnan and Eric, our stalwarts that are busy with, I guess, other responsibilities, whatever that is. But yeah, thank you for coming on, man. We do appreciate you.
Of course.
And then I'm, of course, Kevin Knight. You guys can follow me on Twitter at Falcoholic Kevin. all kinds of stuff this week. Like I got my Morton Anderson, the first part of that interview that came out on Tuesday, so look that up. And I'll have my stats preview tomorrow, players to watch Friday, all that good stuff as usual coming out. But like I said before, guys, if you don't mind throwing us a like and subscribe in the channel, we do appreciate that. It does help us out in some algorithmic way. And like I said, we will see you guys Sunday after the game. It's going to be a fun show, hopefully. Or it'll be fun.
With a win.
Yeah, or it'll be a fun, I guess, show for you guys otherwise, because you like to watch us squirm after the games if we lose. So thank you all for tuning in. We appreciate you. We will see you guys again on Sunday night. Until then, have a great night. Enjoy the rest of your week. See you then, guys.